After my family laughed that I'd never be as beautiful as my sister, I was forced to serve her guests at her engagement party in an apron. One aunt whispered, "You should be grateful you're even invited." I held my tongue until I opened the gift I bought her. Her smile vanished. Mom shouted, "What have you done?" Then the music cut off as. I'm Nora, 29, and I grew up in upstate New York, about 30 minutes outside Albany. My sister, Sienna, 27, was born 2 years after me, and I swear from the moment she was out of the womb, the world shifted to revolve around her. She was the beautiful one. The kind of beauty that made strangers stop in supermarkets and compliment her hair or eyes or posture. She had that ballet dancer build, the honey blonde hair, soft features. I, on the other hand, was the tall, slightly broad-shouldered, plain daughter. Those were Mom's words once, not mine. "You have a strong look, Nora," she'd said, not feminine like Sienna, but sturdy. Practical. From the time we were little, I was put in the background. Sienna was put in ballet, then modeling, and eventually onto beauty pageants. I was shoved into piano lessons to stay busy. I played clarinet in school and read novels in the library while she was off doing photo shoots or going to school dances with a rotating door of good-looking boys. Our dad left when I was around 10. He had an affair and moved out west to Oregon with his new girlfriend. He stayed in touch for a while, mostly with me. I think he saw what was happening even then. But he slowly faded out, remarried, and we only talk about once a year now. He sent a card on my birthday last year. No gift. It was still more than what Sienna got. That says something. Anyway, fast forward to now. I work in transportation infrastructure. Basically, I help manage bridge safety inspections and public road improvement plans. It's not sexy, but it's solid work and pays decently. I rent a little apartment in Troy. Quiet, clean, mine. Sienna, meanwhile, now works in PR for a luxury skincare brand. She lives in a loft in Manhattan and posts morning matcha selfies every day. She met Bryce, her now ex-fiancé, at a yacht party last summer. He's some high-flying finance guy, originally from Connecticut. I met him once before the engagement party. He gave me a brief up-down glance, then offered a handshake like I was a temp worker. Anyway, the story you're here for begins when my mom called me one Sunday about 6 weeks ago. It was a short conversation. She was so excited and I just had to help out. Help out how? I asked. Oh, nothing too much. You're good with organizing things and helping behind the scenes. Just wear something neat. Bring that black apron of yours, the one you wore when you helped at Lydia's wedding rehearsal dinner. That apron. I bought it for my part-time job in college when I worked at a catering company. Black, plain, thick cotton. Nothing that screamed guest. Everything that screamed staff. Wait, I said slowly. You want me to serve at her party? No. Not serve. Just keep the drinks going. Help pass hors d'oeuvres. You know how flustered your aunt gets with big groups. I should have said no. But I've spent 29 years swallowing things I should have said. Sure, Mom, I replied. Whatever you need. The party was at my childhood home, still painted that faded buttery yellow, with the same creaky porch steps and wind chimes on the eaves. Sienna had flown in the day before. I arrived early to help. And by help, I mean I was handed a list and told where everything was. My mother barely looked up from her phone. There was a catering crew, professionals, but somehow I ended up with a tray in my hand, smiling and offering Prosecco to strangers while Sienna posed for photos in her white engagement dress. Not white, but that muted blush champagne tone that cost more than my entire week's pay. She looked like she belonged in a bridal catalog. Bryce looked like he was posing for an ad campaign for expensive watches. I kept my head down, like I always had. Until I passed by Aunt Vera and overheard her say, just loud enough for me to catch, she should be grateful she's even invited. They were laughing. Laughing like I was a punchline in a joke only the family understood. I went into the kitchen and stood there for a few minutes, pretending to check the drinks while my face burned. Now, here's the thing. I hadn't come to this party completely unarmed. I brought a gift, sure, but it wasn't from a registry. And it wasn't meant to be sweet. 3 weeks before the party, I'd gotten a text from a former classmate, Marcy, who works at a resort in Tulum. Hey Nora, it said. Is your sister dating someone? Because I swear I just saw her here with a guy, and it wasn't the guy she was posting about. She attached a photo. It was grainy, taken from across the beach bar, but clear enough. Sienna. In a tiny red bikini. Kissing a man I didn't recognize. Definitely not Bryce. I didn't reply right away. I sat on it for days. Then I asked Marcy to send me a clearer shot if she could. She came through. A close-up of the two of them walking hand in hand on the beach, time-stamped. It was dated barely 3 weeks before Sienna posted her engagement announcement. I knew I could do nothing. Let it go. Stay quiet, like always. But the look on Aunt Vera's face. The goddamn apron. My own mother turned me into a servant for the perfect daughter. That broke something. So I printed the photo. Blew it up. Put it in a simple, expensive-looking silver frame. Wrapped it with cream and gold paper and topped it with a white bow. No card. Just the gift. Later, when the sun was setting and fairy lights twinkled across the yard, it was time for gifts. Bryce and Sienna sat in their little makeshift throne chairs as if they were royalty. Guests gathered around, clapping, laughing. The photographer buzzed around, snapping photos of candlelit smiles. Sienna unwrapped an engraved cheese board. A wine decanter. A cashmere throw. Then she picked up mine. Her smile was wide and bright, her hand running over the ribbon. She opened it carefully. Pulled out the box. Slid off the lid. And then her face changed. It went blank. Completely blank, like someone had flipped a switch and wiped all expression. What is it? Bryce asked, leaning over. She didn't speak. Just turned the frame toward him. His face went from confused to pale in 2 seconds. He stood up. Looked at her. Then at me. Mom was the first to speak. What have you done? Then the music stopped. Someone must have hit the Bluetooth speaker in the panic. Sienna stood, eyes wide. You bitch. You're jealous. You couldn't stand, I didn't take the photo, I said calmly. A friend did. Said she thought your fiancé should know who you're really committed to. Nora. Mom snapped. You ruined everything. No, I said. You all ruined me. Over and over again. This? This is me saying I'm done. Bryce stared at the photo for a few seconds longer, then looked at Sienna again. Not yelling. Not cursing. Just a long, silent stare like something in him had gone cold. This was taken 3 weeks before we got engaged, he finally said, holding the frame like it was something disgusting. I can explain, Sienna stammered, her voice shrill and cracking. It wasn't, you told me you hadn't spoken to Dylan since January, Bryce said, cutting her off. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut like glass. You looked me in the eye and swore. A few guests had already begun inching toward the back patio, grabbing their coats like they didn't want to witness the unraveling. The fairy lights above flickered gently in the soft wind, but everything else was tense and still. Mom's hands were on her hips. She wasn't looking at Sienna. She was glaring at me. You've always been spiteful, she hissed. This is the lowest thing you've ever done. I didn't reply. I didn't trust myself to speak yet. Bryce turned toward me then. Did you know about this before today? I found out a few weeks ago, I said plainly. A friend saw them. Send me the photo. You chose to humiliate her like this? He asked, not angry, just baffled. Why not just tell me? I looked over at my mother, who was now whispering furiously to Aunt Vera, probably trying to spin a new narrative. My eyes settled back on Bryce. I thought about telling you privately, I said. But then I was handed an apron. Told to serve hors d'oeuvres. My own aunt said I should be grateful just to be invited. Bryce looked like he wanted to say something more but couldn't find the words. He turned back to Sienna, who had dropped into her chair again, one trembling hand against her temple. Her makeup had started to smear under her eyes. I can't do this, he said. I can't marry someone who lies to my face and cheats before the ring is even on. Bryce, please, she reached for him, but he stepped back. Then he walked. He didn't run. He didn't slam the gate behind him. He just walked, past the photographer, past the gift table, down the gravel path to his car. The sound of the ignition was oddly loud in the quiet evening. Then the car was gone. Sienna buried her face in her hands and let out a sob. A few guests moved toward her, unsure, awkward. Others, including some of the relatives who had been gushing just minutes earlier, pretended to be concerned but were clearly just here for the drama. Phones were slipping into purses quietly, probably to avoid any accusations of recording. Mom's fury snapped back to me like a rubber band. "I can't believe you did this," she growled, her face now red with rage. "You've ruined your sister's future. Are you proud of yourself?" I blinked. She did that herself. I just made sure no one else had to live under her illusion. "You are not welcome in this house ever again." "That's fine," I said. "You made it clear years ago that I never really was." A beat of silence. One or two gasps. The caterer, who had returned to the kitchen, looked like she wanted to disappear behind the fridge. I turned and left. No dramatic exits. No parting speeches. Just one foot in front of the other until I reached my car. The air was heavy and smelled like cut grass and perfume. I sat behind the wheel for a few minutes, waiting for my hands to stop shaking. I don't remember the entire drive back to Troy. I only remember the quiet, and how the farther I got from that house, the more I could breathe. Over the next few days, I didn't hear from anyone. No calls. No texts. No slanderous Facebook posts, at least not publicly. But I knew my mother. She wouldn't lash out right away. She'd wait. She'd turn it into a long, slow shunning campaign, telling relatives how unwell I was, how I had issues. She'd cry on cue and make sure I was the villain in every whispered conversation. I blocked her number. I blocked Sienna's, too, even though I knew she wouldn't call me anyway. She wouldn't know what to say. The silence was beautiful. Until a week later. An envelope arrived. No return address, just my name in tight cursive handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a photo, an old one, probably over 20 years old. It was me, maybe age 8, with Dad. He was carrying me on his shoulders. We were both laughing. On the back, it said, "You were always my favorite. Dad." No signature. No letter. Just that. I hadn't seen that picture in years. Probably taken before the divorce. Maybe last summer we all had together. I held the photo for a long time. Thought about how it ended up in my mailbox. Wondered if it was from Sienna. Or maybe from Dad himself. A quiet message from across the country. Maybe he'd heard what happened. Maybe someone told him. But that was just a guess. I didn't try to find out. What mattered was that, for the first time in my adult life, I felt seen. Even if it was just from the past. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of being on my own. The days that followed felt strange. Not peaceful, not chaotic, just empty in a way I hadn't expected. You'd think that calling out the golden child and indirectly dismantling an engagement would come with some kind of catharsis, or at least a rush of righteous energy. But that didn't happen. I went back to work. Logged in, did my reports, answered emails, sat through meetings where no one asked about my weekend, and thank God for that. But at home? My apartment felt colder. Maybe not literally, but there was something about coming back every day to a place where no one cared what I'd done. I didn't have anyone to debrief with. I wasn't exactly close with friends anymore, not since Sienna had moved to the city and the small scraps of social invitations I used to get from family events dried up entirely. 3 days after the party, I saw a post on Instagram from one of Sienna's friends. It wasn't direct, it never is, but it was a close-up of 2 wine glasses, with the caption, "Some people just can't stand to see others happy." Nail polish medium skin tone #stay jealous. I stared at it for a few minutes. It had been posted from our mother's house, judging by the tablecloth in the background. I didn't reply. Didn't comment. But I muted the account. Then I muted everyone else. I didn't need reminders of how Sienna was already rebuilding her image. A week later, I got a call from an unknown number. I was at work, so I let it go to voicemail. It was Dad. His voice had changed. Older. Slower. "Hey, Nora. I heard about what happened. Not all the details, but enough. Just wanted to say I'm sorry I wasn't there for you more. I know it's late. Probably too late. But I never stopped thinking about you." He left his number. Said I could call or not. Up to you, he said. No pressure. I didn't call that night. I didn't know what I'd say. Instead, I sat on my couch and reread the back of that photo again. You were always my favorite. I knew it shouldn't matter. That parents aren't supposed to have favorites. That this kind of thing only reinforces the unhealthy dynamics I grew up in. But damn it, it mattered. A few more weeks went by. Radio silence from Mom. Not a peep from Sienna. I heard through a cousin, Chloe, who I'd always been closest to, that Sienna was recovering and planning a retreat. Apparently, she was going to Bali with some friends. Mom had offered to pay for it. Of course she had. Meanwhile, Chloe said, she told everyone you did it because you're bitter and lonely. I replied, let her. Chloe paused. For what it's worth, she's not handling it as well as she pretends. I didn't ask for details. I didn't want to feed on that. I'd had enough of that entire dynamic. But Chloe wasn't done. I think she always knew you were smarter than her. That's the one thing she couldn't compete with. She just never thought you'd actually use it. That caught me off guard. Chloe never used to say things like that. She always played neutral. I asked, why are you telling me this? She was quiet for a second. Because I saw how they treated you. And I'm sorry I didn't say anything sooner. I didn't know how to reply to that either. So I just said thank you and ended the call. I finally did call Dad. It wasn't emotional. It was awkward. We talked about work. Weather. He asked if I still played piano. I said I hadn't in years. He said he always thought I was better than I believed. Then there was silence. He said, I should have taken you with me. And maybe he should have. But I told him I was okay. That I'd found my footing. That I didn't need anyone to rescue me. He asked if he could send something. He'd found an old box of stuff from when we were kids. I said sure. When it arrived, a few days later, I opened it slowly, like it might bite. Inside were old drawings, letters, even a few photos I didn't remember existing, me and Sienna, once close, before the pageants, before the favoritism. There was a birthday card from when I turned 9. It said, to my brilliant girl. You shine bright, even when they don't notice. Dad. Sienna finally texted me. Almost a month after the engagement party. It was short. Cold. I hope you're happy. You got what you wanted. You humiliated me in front of everyone I care about. Don't ever contact me again. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I did. I typed, you humiliated yourself. I just stopped covering for you. Then I deleted it. Instead, I wrote, take care of yourself. And left it at that. I've started doing small things for myself lately. I went to a bookstore downtown and bought 3 novels I've been meaning to read. I signed up for a ceramics class. I even drove to Lake George one weekend and stayed overnight at a little bed and breakfast, just because I could. No one called to ask where I was. No one checked in. And for the first time, that didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like freedom. A few months passed. Life went on. I wasn't expecting anything from my mother or sister, no apologies, no reconciliations, no backtracking. And I was okay with that. What I did wasn't about getting even, not really. It was about drawing a line. But sometimes, karma works slowly. Quietly. One afternoon in early spring, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. I let it go to voicemail. It was a woman named Dana. She introduced herself as someone who worked at the PR firm where Sienna was employed. Apparently, she'd been a mentor to Sienna. We used to be close, she said in a carefully measured voice. I thought you should know something, she said. There's been talk. Bryce's family is more connected than Sienna realized. His sister's on the board of a philanthropy partner we work with. There was fallout. Discreet, but impactful. Your sister's being quietly phased out of the client-facing side. She's been moved to an internal comms role. Translation, demoted. Politely, of course. Professionally. But stripped of the glamour. Dana said she didn't know the full story, only that it had to do with ethical concerns over Sienna's behavior and the optics of a broken engagement. She doesn't know I'm calling you, Dana added. But I figured if the roles were reversed, I'd want to know. I thanked her. I didn't ask for more. I didn't need to. A few days later, I got an email. It was from a journalist I used to know back in college, Benji. He wrote for a lifestyle blog now, mostly human interest pieces, soft profiles, that sort of thing. His subject line was, Sienna reached out about a story. Can we talk? I blinked. Read it twice. In the body of the email, Benji said that Sienna had pitched herself for a profile series on resilience and surviving public humiliation. She'd described her broken engagement as the result of jealousy and betrayal by a bitter family member and being blindsided by someone close to her. Benji added, her story didn't sit right with me. I remembered you and thought maybe there was more to it. I won't write anything without getting both sides. Do you want to talk? At first, I hesitated. It would have been easy to walk away. Let Sienna keep spinning her narrative. Let her be the victim in some perfectly curated redemption arc she hoped would win her followers and sympathy. But then I thought about the photo. The apron. The things I'd swallowed over the years. And I realized this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about setting the record straight. So I agreed to talk. Benji and I met at a coffee shop downtown. I kept it clean. I didn't smear her. I just told the truth. About the way I was treated. About what happened at the party. About the photograph. I even gave him permission to use the details, anonymously if he wanted. I didn't care if my name was in it. But I wasn't hiding anymore. He wrote the piece a few weeks later. It wasn't a hit piece. It wasn't scandalous. It was thoughtful. Honest. Balanced. The title was, The Cost of the Spotlight, One Family's Silent Daughter Finally Speaks. He didn't name Sienna directly. But anyone who knew us, or followed her, could piece it together. The reaction was swift and fascinating. Comments poured in on the blog and on social media. Most of them were empathetic. Some were harsh. But the narrative shifted. Sienna's curated posts, which had slowly started back up after her trip to Bali, began getting ratioed. Comments like funny how your sister had to serve food at your engagement party or sounds like you got caught started showing up under her photos. She tried to post a statement about letting go of toxic family ties. That only made things worse. Then something incredible happened. I got a DM from Bryce's sister, Lila. The same one Dana had mentioned. She wrote, I knew something was off about her. Thank you for helping my brother dodge a bullet. We don't forget that kind of thing in this family. Short, polite. But it hit like a bell. Months passed. I started feeling lighter. The apron was long gone. I even stopped checking in on Sienna's socials. She pivoted to wellness content, then tried interior design, then vanished offline altogether for a while. Mom never reached out. Which was fine. I finally donated the last box of childhood stuff I'd been hanging on to. That night, I slept better than I had in years. And then, in late June, something happened that felt like life had just circled back around, offering me a different kind of closure. I was invited to speak at a panel at RPI, my alma mater. They were hosting an event for young women in STEM, and someone had read Benji's article. They wanted me to talk about resilience, self-worth, and staying grounded in a world that values the surface more than substance. I almost said no. Then I remembered that girl in the black apron, carrying trays while her family laughed behind her back. So I said yes. That day, I stood in front of a room of young women and told my story, not revenge, not drama. Just the truth. About being the daughter no one noticed, and finding value in being enough for yourself. Afterward, a girl came up to me, must have been 19 or 20. She was tall, strong-boned, glasses too big for her face. She said, I always felt like the wrong kind of girl. Like I wasn't soft enough to be loved. But your story, it helped. I gave her a hug. We didn't say anything else. And right then, I realized, this was revenge. Not the humiliation. Not the article. Not the fallout. The real revenge? Was becoming someone I actually respected. Someone I wanted to be. And I never had to destroy anyone to get there. They took care of that themselves.